too, how big is it is if like the prosecution's witnesses disagree, right? So they might be trying to say the same thing, but they're disagreeing on different factors. So like, so they had like four like medical type experts to come in,
Mhm.
talk about okay,
Mhm.
what was the mechanism of death, and so three of them
Mhm.
like lack of oxygen, asphyxia, but Dr. Baker, the one who did the coroner's report, was like no, it was basically heart failure, right? So how does that? Do you think that'll play a factor?
Yeah, I don't think that'll weigh that heavily on anything. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but I think your heart can fail if you can't breathe, right? And
Yeah.
I know that sounds crazy, but I think heart failure can be attributed to like lack of oxygen, right?
Mm.
So I
That
don't
shit
think,
sound right to me.
yeah.
I ain't
No,
gonna lie to you.
I don't say that to be facetious. I'm just saying I think that all of that sounds like he died because he couldn't breathe.
Yeah. Well, I was just asking because I know that Eric Nelson kept bringing it up with him with Dr. Baker on the stand. He was like, "So was it loss of breath or was it heart failure?" And he was like, "No, it was heart failure." Right.
Yeah, that was a very good strategy, and you always want to like, I'm sure that was probably the last thing he wanted the jurors to hear. Like
Hmm.
it wasn't the fact that he couldn't breathe; it was heart failure. So that was a good strategy.
Yeah.
So, in
Gotcha.
the grand scheme of things, though, I don't think it will weigh that heavily on the juror's mind. I think what will weigh the heaviest is what the experts say
Hmm.
and if his actions were reasonable or not.
Gotcha.
Kind of, I guess, correlating it to the woman that you said you was representing, and she was lying, and then her family came in, and they was all like, "Nah, we not working with her. Like, she be up to no good." Also, I know today, like, they brought George Floyd's like brother in. Um, Emotional testimony. The judges along emotional testimony or whatever. How, like, does it just depend on the circumstances for how much that type of stuff matters? Or like could it be valuable or maybe at a disadvantage in some way? How?
Yeah, so it depends. I mean, you get the opportunity to pick your jurors. You get the opportunity to know a little bit about them. So, with the knowledge of the makeup of your jurors, you do want to pull on their heartstrings. You do want to say things or convey things in a way that will resonate with them. So, I think the emotional stuff is the stuff that doesn't seem like it matters the most, but it does.
Okay, so with you saying that, my follow up question was going to be like, what is something that we may not be asking or that we're not going to see in the news or that people are not going to report about that in this particular situation like matters wholeheartedly, but we just don't see it because we're not in a courtroom every day like you. Like, can you think of anything that may like severely matter in this case, but like people may not necessarily see it because it's not always talked about in the public eye?
Mm. Hell, I think I saw a meme that said this is like one of the first times where we have to have a 2-week trial about somebody that died on camera. So I think a lot of the stuff regarding this trial is just kind of already out in the open. But I think the technicalities of what can bar charges against a police officer are the most important. And I don't think people really talk about that too much. People are just like, he killed him, he killed him, he killed him. It's like, okay, well, are there exceptions to that? Does he have any defenses? I know we talk, I mean, like, there are two words in law that are very important. One is intent and one is reasonableness, right? Those are the things you always hear lawyers say. What's the intent? What's the intent? Was it reasonable? Was it reasonable? And if they find his actions reasonable, whether or not we don't, will the jurors find it reasonable is important. And I think if people just step outside of their emotions and see it from a police officer standpoint, it would be better.